Hey everybody, it's Dr. May. What's going on? Hope you're doing good today. I'm going to do the first part today of 3 parts in Radically Open DBT that are their version of mindfulness training. Okay, so this one is called Overcontrolled States of Mind. Okay, and I'm going to share this with you today to talk about that. Okay, and so if you've ever been in regular DBT, you're I'm sure you're familiar with this diagram, okay? Because in regular DBT, there's emotional mind, reasonable mind, and wise mind, okay? So if you're just seeing this for the first time, it's probably gonna blow your mind that there's a same diagram with different stuff in it, okay? But this one has to do with over-controlled states of mind, okay? So if you tend to be more on the closed side, that you might have more of a fixed mind or a fatalistic mind response to certain circumstances. So the idea is to move into a flexible mind, which is kind of a merging of both of them, which is associated with more of an open state of mind. Okay, so see how that dialectic pops up again? Okay, and because it's part of mindfulness, we have to get more aware of the times when we're in these different states of mind, rather. So when I'm in fixed mind, I become more aware of it. It gives me more power to move into a flexible mind. Just like if I'm more aware of fatalistic mind, it then gives me more choice to move into a flexible mind. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you about all three. And with that knowledge, you could then become more aware of your own states of mind. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so just wanted to give you a little background, right? So if you remember back from lesson 2, okay, all the way back in lesson 2, there's 5 emotionally relevant cue categories. So there's 5 basic ways that we get triggered by stuff, okay? So there's safety cues that make us feel safe and socially open with people. There's novelty cues that are kind of discrepant and kind of like, oh, gee, what's that? That's kind of bizarre, right? There's rewarding cues that make us feel like we want to work towards something and achieve a goal. But with fixed mind and fatalistic mind, they tend to be mostly triggered by feelings where it has to do with threatening cues or overwhelming cues, okay? So what actually feels threatening? Now, in this case, it may not be like I'm physically threatened, but more like emotionally threatened or overwhelmed, okay? So they tend to arise in the face of like being criticized, being challenged, being questioned by somebody, getting uncomfortable feedback, maybe with things not going our way or not getting what we want, or just being overwhelmed by certain life circumstances, right? So those things make us feel more uncomfortable, more vulnerable, and more threatened, so to speak. And so we respond with a sort of defense mechanism with fixed mind or fatalistic mind. Okay, so just keep this in mind in the background that that's why these things arise. Okay, it's sort of our way of trying to cope with it. Okay, all right, so we're going to start with fixed mind. Okay, can you take a little guess based on the posture of that little Miss So and so what fixed mind could be about? Maybe, right? A little bit. Okay, so fixed mind is kind of related to our fight mode, right? So if we're feeling we're getting a threatening cue, this is when we kind of stand up and fight and defend ourselves, okay? So our threat system activated, we fight off like feedback that feels dangerous or some kind of criticism or whatever it is that feels dangerous to our ego, so to speak, or to our well-being, okay? And sometimes related to that, we feel some anger, right? Or signs of body tension, right? Because we're in that fight mode, all right? Okay, so fixed mind has some typical thinking patterns that we could also become aware of, right? So we might reject anything that makes us feel uncomfortable. Just say, no, that's not true. Okay, no, you criticizing me? No, that's not true. Oh, that feedback? No, that's not true, right? We kind of like shut it down before we even get a chance to feel it, right? We might react based on rules and past experience, so that feels a little bit more solid than this uncertain situation right now. We might experience denial and stubbornness, right? Because we don't want to let it in. We just want to be stubborn and rigid against whatever is coming our way. No, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to do that, right? So we might believe change is unnecessary because I already know the answer. So like the little girl in the cartoon on the left is going, I know, right? Sometimes we already just want to know it. We don't want to have to change our mind. We don't want to have to rethink it. We don't have to admit we were wrong. We just want to already know it, right? So that kind of feeling, that's sort of a fixed mind thought, okay? Refusing to question our inner beliefs, convictions, or intuitions, right? So we don't want to do self-inquiry here when we're fixed. We just want to like know what we know, right? Okay, I just want to believe what I believe and be done with it. I don't want to have to change my mind. And related to that, we might be reluctant to consider another person's point of view, right? I just want to hear my point of view. I don't want to hear your point of view. Who cares, right? I'm just going to argue what I think. Okay, so see how that is? There's kind of a rigidity there, like a cognitive rigidity. All right, so there's also emotions associated with fixed mind. Now, I mentioned anger before, but there's also what they call social status emotions, which we talked about a few lessons ago when we did flexible mind SAGE, right? That has to do with, shame and embarrassment and things like that. And those are related to social status, right? When you are feeling shamed or embarrassed, you kind of lower yourself and put yourself below somebody in order to make peace, right? But here, the social status emotions are kind of making us rise above, right? So the social status emotions are putting us on top, right? With arrogance or pride, self-righteousness, overconfidence, right? So see how that's tied into the thinking, right? If I feel like I'm already right, I already know the answer, I don't need to change, I don't need to listen to you, it's very like arrogant, right? So that's kind of the vibe here. All right, and also related to that, frustration, anger, bitterness, right? No fear, I don't want to change. Who are you to question me? Right? All right. So action urges and behaviors. So these are things you could feel like doing or things you might actually end up doing, okay? So you might explain, defend, or justify your behavior, right? So if someone's questioning you, you don't want to have to consider their right, so you just kind of like defend yourself, right? You might react in an aggressive and antagonistic manner, right? You might attack back to take the heat off of you and put the heat on them, right? Turn the tables by questioning or attacking the other person's perspective, right? So let me just shoot down what you have to say so you don't have to question what I have to say, right? Block or obstruct another person's behavior or goals, right? So I'm going to try to sabotage you because you were trying to sabotage me. So there's a little revenge angle in there, right? Might become defiant, non-compliant, or uncooperative, right? Because that's a little bit of a stubborn thing to do. I'm not going to go along with what you want and show that I'm giving in or changing or considering you, right? Or we might actually seek revenge, right? Because if you made me feel bad by questioning me, I may just want to get back at you, okay? So you see how this can even sabotage ourselves by going too far with fixed mind, right? We might end up in deep doo-doo sometimes. Okay, and because, it's kind of a painful place to be if you think about it, right? Because I'm being questioned, I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm reacting in a very fixed way, and sometimes in ways that are going to get me in trouble. So I may not be aware of my fixed mind, or I might try to like deny it, or not even want to engage with it, okay? So when we work on it, we have to do the opposite and become more aware and admit it, okay? All right. So obviously there's some drawbacks to fixed mind, as you might have kind of already thought, or maybe personally experienced, right? So although one of the pros is it could temporarily protect us from the pain of like vulnerability or not knowing something or being wrong or feeling incompetent, in the long run, it could blow up in your face because of the way you're reacting to people. And the drawback on the left, if we're so fixed and we want to do it our way, right? Or we think we're already right, it's preventing us from learning something new, right? Because if I'm so sure I'm right, I'm not going to listen to anybody. I'm not going to take in any feedback. I'm not going to make any necessary changes. So I'm going to stay stuck and perhaps fall behind because I'm not, loosening up and taking in new information, okay? So it could have a negative impact on my choices, and it could limit my spontaneity even, right? So sometimes I have to loosen up to kind of go with the flow of whatever's happening. But if I'm so rigid, I'm not going with the flow. I'm just going with my narrow mind, okay? All right. Also, it can damage relationships, right? So if I'm interacting with somebody and I don't want to listen to that person, or I'm shooting down what they say, or I'm insisting that I'm right, it could really upset the other person, right? Because nobody likes to be told that they're wrong or be attacked for their point of view. But that's how we end up reacting sometimes, right? So in the heat of the moment, we feel like we're the ones who are vulnerable and we're just defending ourselves and we're just trying to stay afloat. But we come across to the other person like we're the attacker, right? And they might end up feeling bad. And so when the dust settles, oh, now we might have to be stuck apologizing, repairing things. Okay, so see how this could kind of blow up and get in the way, right? So this could be any kind of relationship. It could be like in that picture, maybe a partnership with a person. It could be a business relationship, a friendship, right? So we have to be careful, right? Because we need people. One of the main points of radically open DBT is we're part of a tribe, right? We got to belong, okay? We got to get along with people. Okay, but there's hope, okay? So the technique for working through fixed mind, they call being kind to fixed mind. So they threw in a little rhyme, okay? So you could be a poet, you didn't even know it. All right, so step one is, first of all, you gotta look for signs of fixed mind. All right, so if you're feeling challenged, you're feeling vulnerable, you're worried about a mistake, you might be reacting in fixed mind. So take a look to see if you're actually in fixed mind, right? So step two, building on that, use a little self-inquiry, right? Ask yourself some key questions about some of the qualities of fixed mind that we just went over to see if that's what's going on here, right? So try to figure out, am I overreacting? Am I being very rigid right now? What's going on, right? So kind of like go through some of that. All right. Then once you kind of start to realize it, instead of fighting, fixing, or controlling fixed mind, right? Because sometimes when we, get upset about something, we want to control even more, but that keeps us even more fixed, okay? So instead of controlling it, right, try to just be kind to it, all right? So it's a little bit of a different strategy than might be your go-to automatic, all right? So let's explain what that means, how to be kind to fixed mind. All right, so this is all part of that step three. So it's like step three, A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, so first, you could accept with your body and be kind by loosening up your physiology. So you can go back to your big 3+1, which we learned several lessons ago. All right, so this is, the +1 is leaning back in your chair if you're sitting. Taking a slow, deep breath to relax yourself. Closed mouth, cooperative smile, and eyebrow wags. Okay, and you're doing that as if you're relating to your fixed mind, as if your fixed mind is sitting across from you and you're looking at it and you're kind of giving those positive social signals to your fixed mind. Okay, so you could use self-inquiry to create more of an open mind and learn from fixed mind. So the first self-inquiry is a little different. That's just to increase your awareness about whether you're in fixed mind. Now you're using it to kind of explore what the fixed mind is all about, right? And to try to loosen it up so your mind's a little more open, all right? Next, you could direct a loving kindness practice toward your fixed mind, okay? So that was back several lessons ago too. I think about lesson 4, okay? So you can imagine yourself, instead of directing loving kindness toward someone you're close to or a neutral person, direct it toward your fixed mind, okay? So you could use some of the common phrases they use, such as, let my fixed mind experience peace, or let my fixed mind be content, or let my fixed mind feel safe and secure. So what if you help to transform your fixed mind by wishing it well in those ways? And I actually might kind of, quiet down a little bit or calm down a little bit, and it won't be as such a powerful fighter bodyguard, right? All right, next thing we can do, right, is to kind of like laugh at our shortcomings or laugh at our mistakes instead of taking them so seriously, right? So fixed mind came about because I was taking my flaws very seriously, because I thought it was the end of the world, because I thought, oh my God, this feedback means I did something wrong and that's terrible, right? So what if I flipped it around and laughed at myself instead? That, oh, there I go again, not knowing everything or whatever it was, right? So this loosens it up even more and helps us be more flexible. Okay, and then finally, forgive yourself for being in fixed mind, okay? Chances are it's been a long-standing habit, right? You just kind of automatically go into it without even thinking about it. Chances are it's going to take a while to undo it a little bit. So be patient with yourself, forgive yourself, right? You didn't mean to do it, you just did it, okay? So try to let things go, not obsess over the fact that you were in fixed mind. Okay, so we're moving on. All right, so we're moving to the fatalistic mind. Okay, so again, arises for the same kind of reasons: feeling vulnerable, criticized, getting uncomfortable feedback, not getting what you want, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so fatalistic mind is a little bit of a different response. Okay, so let's pull apart the words, right? So in case you're not completely sure what fatalistic means, that's okay. I'm defining it for you. So fatalistic means maintaining an attitude of resignation due to the belief that all events are predetermined and therefore inevitable. So it's kind of like, well, there's nothing I could do. I'm stuck. All right. There's nothing I could do. What's the point? Forget about it. Okay. So it's kind of like a giving up. It's kind of like an I don't care or whatever, kind of like in here. Like I'm stuck at the bottom of this pit and there's no way out. Okay. And there's nothing I could do. Okay. So instead of trying to overfix or over defend or fight for yourself, you're kind of flipping the other way and saying, nothing I could do. Okay. And honestly, you could flip back and forth. They're not completely opposite. So they look opposite. Fixed mind and fatalistic mind could be both part of your repertoire, right? You could try to fix it, and then it's not working. And then you say, oh, forget it. Forget it. All right, whatever you want. Let's do what you want. I don't care. Right? So you can really flip from one side to the other. All right, so how does radically open DBT define fatalistic mind? Okay, so they say it involves giving up, appeasing, abandoning, or shutting down when you don't get what you want or you're overwhelmed by life circumstances. Okay, so there's that overwhelm. So sometimes we get to that point when we feel not just threatened, but so threatened like there's nothing we could do. So that's like that shutdown response. Okay, so more about that in a couple of minutes. Okay, so the fatalistic mind emotional experience, all right? So it might involve feeling unappreciated, invalidated and misunderstood, helpless, right? So there's nothing I could do. That's a helpless feeling, like a martyr or a victim, like poor me, look what happened and I can't do anything and there's nothing I can do anyway and nothing matters and who cares, right? It's kind of like that victim vibe, resentful, bitter, cynical about change. There's nothing that could happen anyway. There's nothing that's going to change. Nothing I could do, right? Numb and shut down. So that's part of that overwhelm. Okay. So when your body's in an overwhelm response and you can't fight and you can't flee, you tend to shut down and get numb. All right. And you kind of collapse. So that's tied into this a lot. Okay. So fatalistic mind action urges and or behaviors, right? So things you might feel like doing or things you might actually do, okay? So like I mentioned before, there's a strong giving up component. So the feeling is change is unnecessary because there is no answer. I can't change because there's nothing to be changed. I don't even know what to do, okay? So there's a bitter resignation. I'm just resigning to it. I don't really want to, but I can't see the end of this, okay? So related thoughts. Why bother? Nothing will ever change. F it. Nothing really matters. Okay. Sorry for the bad language there, but that's a really strong component, right? And sometimes when you're about to relapse for something that you're trying to give up, like substance abuse, you might say, F it. Who cares? There's no point. I can't do this recovery thing, right? And that's very related to fatalistic mind. Okay. Also, everything's my fault. I never do anything right. Okay. Forget it. You're all right. And I can't do anything right. So why should I even try? Okay. That's that kind of victim kind of vibe, right? Okay. So down the bottom, disguised resistance, right? So part of you is resisting, but you're also looking a little passive on the surface, right? So there's a passive aggressive response. So I'm not taking direct action like with fixed mind where I'm outwardly defending myself or fighting back. I'm just kind of like expressing my disgust or my unhappiness in indirect ways, okay? I might pout about something, but not really offer a solution. I might stonewall somebody or do a silent treatment, kind of like in that picture, right? So if it's not gonna go my way or if I can't get what I want or there's no solution, I'm not even gonna bother with you. Why should I even negotiate with you? Forget it, okay? Quietly delaying progress, right? Secretly planning revenge. So there's a little bit of an undercurrent of a passive aggressive. Okay, appeasing. So this is kind of when, let's say you started out trying to negotiate or trying to do something that was going to work out for you or trying to propose a solution and you were getting nowhere. So the other person wasn't listening. And so suddenly, without really agreeing, you start to say, okay, fine, whatever you want. All right, okay, I agree now, fine, we're doing it your way, okay, right? So that's kind of like a half-hearted going along with it, but you don't really need it, all right? Also related to that, lying and pretending that all is well. Like if you said, okay, fine, forget it, we'll do it your way. And someone said, oh no, you still seem like you're upset. Come on, let's talk about it. You say, no, it's fine, I'm fine. Right? So you're saying one thing, but you're feeling another, okay? And related to that, minimizing the importance of a problem. No, forget it, I don't care, it doesn't matter, okay? All right, next, abandoning or escaping the situation, right? So there's a certain lack of engagement that happens with fatalistic mind, right? So instead of like trying to work it out, trying to talk something through, trying to problem solve, you're just saying, I'm giving up, I'm not doing it. So you're disengaging, you're walking out, you're not wanting to talk, you're not wanting to listen, okay? You're not wanting to participate. You might change the topic, you know, forget it, let's not even talk about that anymore. Walking away from someone in the middle of a conversation when it's not really finished, and maybe even calling in sick for a big meeting or kind of escaping some kind of responsibility, okay? All right, so that's your abandoning, escaping. And finally, related to the overwhelm response is a shutdown. Sometimes you physically might go to an immobilization response. You might feel kind of numb, like you can't move, you're moving very sluggishly. You kind of, you know, don't feel like sharing. You stop goal-directed behavior, so there's a lack of movement, there's an immobilization. I'm not gonna work on it, I'm just gonna do nothing. I'm just gonna, you know, close down. Another thing that's related to this too is what they call a don't hurt me response. Okay, more about this later in another lesson for radically open DBT. But don't hurt me response is kind of like, you know, making the other person feel bad for criticizing you, like, oh, look how much you hurt me now. Look how, you know, wow, look how upset I am because of you. It's all your fault because you didn't go along with this. You're really tearing me up and that's terrible. And you're such a bad person, right? And that kind of thing. So you're kind of putting out signals that make the other person feel bad for hurting you. Okay, so you're not staying strong, you're not standing your ground, you're just kind of going into that weaker victim passive role. Okay. Another thing too is that some people experience afterwards, if they experience kind of like a passive shutdown, that they feel bad about it because a lot of times in our culture, you know, people prefer to have more of an active response rather than a passive one. So you might end up criticizing yourself and feeling like, oh no, I should have tried harder, I should have did this or that. So there could be some regret involved. Okay, so how do we work on fatalistic mind? All right, so we had be kind to fixed mind, okay? But here they offer challenging fatalistic mind. Okay, so the first two steps are very similar. So step one is kind of like the awareness step. So you're just gonna kind of look for signs of being in fatalistic mind, kind of step back from what's going on and check in with yourself and see if you're doing some of those fatalistic mind behaviors, right? Next, you could use self-inquiry to kind of ask yourself key questions to help determine if you're in fatalistic mind, kind of be more open to that possibility. All right. And then three, they say it's important for us to listen and learn from fatalistic mind, right? So instead of shoving it aside, maybe we could kind of figure out what it's trying to tell us about ourselves, about the situation, right? So maybe we could kind of listen to it, kind of hear what it has to say. Okay, so welcome the experience as a teacher rather than thinking like, oh, this is terrible, it's the enemy. Okay. All right. So move myself again a little bit. Whoops. All right, it's hard to grab the the little window sometimes. All right, so now you know, I'm admitting I'm in fatalistic mind. I have to admit it to myself. I should out myself to another person because it thrives in secrecy. So once you kind of put it out there that I think I'm operating in fatalistic mind, you tell somebody, it kind of gives you a good starting point for working on it. Okay. And also it involves taking responsibility, right? That although you feel in a victim mode, and when you're in a victim mode, you tend to blame people, you blame the world. you got to own up to the fact that on some level you chose to be in fatalistic mind, or you chose the emotional experience you had. It may not completely feel that way, but nobody can make you feel a certain way, right? They could kind of be the trigger for you to feel that way, but it's your interpretation, it's your response that led to the fatalistic mind. So instead of blaming, you got to own up, all right? And remind yourself, just to help give you motivation to change, that chances are fatalistic mind isn't in line with your values, right? That you probably want to be more direct with people, you want to be more open, you want to, stay engaged with the process of change. You don't want to just shut down and check out. Okay. Okay. So then the next part in the bottom. So let go of blaming people for your uncomfortable emotions, or longing for the world to change, right? Or secretly hoping the problem will go away, right? So this is all the passive stuff that we have to let go. We have to be more involved in our own choices. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move my head again here. All right. So time for change, right? So sometimes one of the things fatalistic mind is trying to tell us is that a change is necessary. Sometimes we're afraid of it, and so we check out or we say, forget it, I'm not going to do it, right? But chances are there's something that needs to be done that's a little bit different. So we have to try to be a little more open to change, even if it hurts, even if it's uncomfortable, right? And just like with fixed mind, try to turn toward your predicament or turn toward your fatalistic mind using the big 3+1. So again, leaning back in your chair, deep breath, closed mouth smile, and eyebrow wags. Okay, so welcome your fatalistic mind with those gestures and that social engagement. Okay, try to be a little bit more open to feedback. When you feel more social safety, it'll be a little easier to do that. So the body language will help. Okay. And then start to maybe clarify some of the steps that are involved with this change or the problem solving. Okay, so start to take some small steps in the right direction instead of just avoiding the change or insisting it's not possible. Okay. And along the way, you don't have to do this alone, right? Collaborate with the person that might be involved with this situation too. Allow others to help you if that's possible. And if they help you, just graciously thank them for their help. Okay, it's not like you have to be stubborn about it. No, I'm just going to all do it myself. Okay, we can let other people in, like let them help you. Okay, and look for ways to reciprocate. So you don't have to feel like, oh, geez, now I owe this person something, right? So next time something comes around, you could help them, you help them, right? We help each other. And then just like the other with fixed mind, forgive yourself for being in fatalistic mind, right? Now that you realize what it is, it's not the ideal response. Instead of beating yourself up for it, just say, listen, it's another habit of mine that I have. I do it sometimes. A lot of people do it sometimes, right? I'm not perfect. It's okay. I'll learn from it, right? Try to forgive yourself. All right. Next. Okay, move myself back up again. All right, so we're getting to the ideal now. So the merging of the fixed and the fatalistic mind is flexible mind, right? So chances are you might remember from other lessons that radically open DBT talks a lot about flexible mind, right? There's a lot of acronyms associated with flexible mind. Flexible mind is deep, flexible mind sage, flexible mind definitely, flexible mind allows. Like there's all kinds of stuff related to flexible mind, right? Because that's what we're striving to be in more often, okay? And we probably won't completely eradicate fixed mind and fatalistic mind, but we could get better at recognizing them and moving to flexible mind, okay? All right, so here we go. So flexible mind involves our favorite self-inquiry, okay? So it involves understanding like I'm somebody who can be questioned, right? I'm not just right all the time, okay? So I'm gonna purposefully question myself and check in with my judgment, or try to learn something new. Okay, having some healthy self-doubt, not just assuming I'm always right. Okay, and those self-inquiry questions kind of remind me of that and kind of lead me into that mind that I'm fallible and that's okay. Okay, I can just be human, no problem. Okay, so flexible mind also involves radical openness. Surprise, surprise, for radically open DBT. All right, so it's being open to what life brings me, experiencing new things with an open heart without losing track of my values, right? It's kind of nice, right? So I'm going to let in the new stuff, but I'm not going to be swayed beyond what's appropriate and right for me, okay? Listening openly to criticism or feedback without immediate denial or agreement. Okay, so not fixed or fatalistic mind. Okay, so try to feel what's possible here. Like, do they have a good point? Is it something worth listening to? Right, so I'm opening my mind. And being open, of course, to the possibility of change. Okay, we stay too stuck, life gets a little boring, not that effective. Okay, flexibility, of course. And they talk about being able to flexibly move from disinhibition, which is kind of like being wildly open, which is appropriate for certain circumstances, and inhibition, which is being a little more closed based on the circumstance, right? So if I'm at a party, disinhibition might be a little bit more appropriate. I'm going to go on the dance floor and dance around, and have fun. Other times, like at a business meeting, I might be a little bit more inhibited, a little bit more reserved, and that's okay. But not being too stuck one way or the other, just being able to move back and forth depending on the circumstance. So doing what's needed in the moment, right? That's being flexible. All right, next. Flexible mind is all about owning up and taking responsibility. Okay, like we were talking before, it's not about, blaming people or saying blaming the world, right, or whatever. I'm responsible for my emotional reaction. Okay, it's based on my thinking, based on my interpretation. Ultimately, I choose my emotional responses, so I have to own up to it. And if I want to change them, it's my responsibility. Okay, and their famous phrase is that we don't see the world as it is, but instead we see it as we are, right? So we don't just see the truth, or we don't just think the truth. It's always through our own lens, right? So when we realize that, it helps us to be more open to other opinions or to other points of view. So that brings us to the last part, celebrating diversity, right? It's not just about my way of thinking. Everybody has their own view, and that's okay. That's actually good, right? Because it lends a lot more spice to life and a lot more possibility than I could offer myself, okay? So we should be open to other people and what they have to say, not just, a little bit rigid on our own, okay? All right, so here's an overview, just to put all the three pieces together. So I'm gonna use a metaphor that they use in the manual, okay, about the Titanic, okay? So here is a picture of the Titanic and the captain, okay? So they say that if we're in fixed mind, okay, it's like the captain of the Titanic thinking, full speed ahead, icebergs be damned, okay? So it doesn't matter the circumstance, I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing, right? So you're too fixed. Fatalistic mind. It's like, let's say you're in the Titanic, hit the first iceberg. So instead of trying to think of what to do now and adjusting to the circumstance and staying engaged with that circumstance, trying to problem solve with the other crew members or whatever, you're just going to hide out in your cabin and pull the covers over your head, okay? You're just checking out. You're not going to really work on it. You're not going to do a plan of action or help us passengers or anything. You're just going to say, screw it. We hit the iceberg. It's too late. Forget it. Nothing I can do, right? But flexible mind, it's like you hit the iceberg or you see the icebergs ahead, but now you're willing to make an adjustment. Okay, I see the icebergs. I guess I have to change course. I got to steer a little bit this way or that way to avoid the icebergs. Or, I can make some changes that'll help the situation. I'm not just going to stay and say, well, it's the unsinkable ship, so full speed ahead, everyone. Okay, so adjusting based on your circumstance, flexible mind. Okay. All right, I think that's the last one. All right, so I hope you liked our 3 states of mind, our overcontrolled states of mind. And so use it to become more aware of yourself and your own states of mind, okay? So it's a great first step, a great thing to be mindful of because it could really help us to make some positive choices, okay? All right, thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll see you the next time. Okay, bye for now.